If you're watching this channel, it's because you don't enjoy watching the world squander what Christendom built, and you want to do your part. Today I'd like to mention one means of doing just that. Email made by and for Catholics. Check out Fidei Email. That's FIDEI.email. Built for Catholic individuals, families, organizations, and groups. They're private, secure, and of course Catholic. God bless. A few days ago, I reported on the case of Father Fernando Maria Cornet, a priest who wrote a book laying out the case for Francis not really being the Pope, but instead Francis is, according to this priest, an anti-pope. A diocesan priest wrote this book, to be clear. That's what Father Fernando Maria Cornet is, meaning he probably knew that he would be canceled for writing that book. And canceled he was. He was removed from the priesthood by Francis himself. Though, of course, if Francis is an anti-pope, then he has no authority to remove anybody from the priesthood. Be that as it may, it turns out that Father Cornet had help from another priest, and now Francis has come for that priest as well. This story has not gotten a lot of reporting outside of Spain and Italy, which is weird. So let's go back a little bit on this, because this is why your priests, your good priests who might drop you subtle hints that they're on the level about questioning everything going on in Rome and are willing to entertain even some of the, what most Catholics would call wilder theories about things. They don't speak up, and there's a good reason for that. But I want you to keep this in mind as we talk about this today. Why does Francis insist on crushing very publicly all these priests who speak up? Why does he do that? He brings attention to this, and he knows that it brings attention to these cases when he crushes these priests, turns them into celebrities. It gets them support who deny that he has the authority to do it, so they keep offering the sacraments and all the rest of it. So why does he do it? Why doesn't he just ignore them? Or have their bishop give them a job in the chancery and forbid them from offering the sacraments publicly or speaking publicly? Why does he go this far? Think about the question for a moment, because all this does is fan the flames of resistance to Francis. So we go to the reporting outlet for this with the headline from Celere Non Possum, Father Giorgio Fade and Don Cornet, some clarifications. And clarifications are needed. There were all sorts of wild rumors about this happening. But it turned out it was two priests behind this who were writing these articles and writing these books and going to conferences and telling people that Francis was really not the Pope. Diocesan priest. Just throwing that out there, right? That's bold, to say the least. And I want you to think about this in the context of another priest who I regularly cover here, Father Joachim Heimerl, whose short public letters challenges the authority of Francis, points out the errors of the synods, and all these other things. And I keep saying they're going to come for him. How long do you think it will take? Here are some clarifications on the situation for some context before we get to the second cancellation from the article. Quote, in recent days, many faithful priests and some bishops have contacted Celere Non Possum to ask for clarifications regarding the statements of Father Giorgio Maria Fade, OCD, and Father Fernando Maria Cornet. These are two priests, the first a Discalced Carmelite from the convent of Monza, and the second a diocesan priest from the Archdiocese of Sassari, who have recently begun to spread scandalous and false theories about the invalid election of Pope Francis. The requests, devoid of sterile curiosity, are formulated above all for pastoral reasons. Several priests and bishops specifically are wondering what they must do also for liturgical celebrations and how to respond to the faithful who ask for an account of these statements. Some complain that the superiors of these priests have not given due resonance to the distancing from these statements or the measures adopted. In particular, it is noted that in the last few hours, Father Fade participated in a conference where these theses were affirmed that were devoid of any logical rationale, canonical, or theological foundation, and he presented himself wearing the habit of a Discalced Carmelite order. Don Fernando Maria Cornet, a priest of the Archdiocese of Sassari, participated in the same meeting via telematics, and he presented himself, because he actually is, as a parish priest. Clearly, all this causes scandal and also damages the image of the religious orders in the dioceses to which they belong. We therefore specify the following. The response of the ecclesiastical authority has always been attentive and prompt. The aim is certainly not to punish, but to discover and make these people think who seem to have untaken impervious paths, sometimes also because of painful experiences. Both the Order of Discalced Carmelites and the Archdiocese of Sassari acted promptly and distanced themselves from these schismatic positions. The Most Reverend Father Miguel Marquis de Calais, OCD, Superior General of the Order of Discalced Carmelites, issued in the last few hours a measure of dismissal from the order against Father Giorgio Maria Fade, which will be notified to him shortly by the Commissioner of the Lombardy Province. Priests and lay people are invited not to participate in the celebrations presided over by him, and moreover, they are invited not to host these conferences, celebrations, or meetings in parish premises. Fade, moreover, has repeatedly stated that, quote, if I am shown with evidence in hand that I was wrong, I am ready to retract. These statements, however, are denied by the facts, as in recent days, a well-known and valid canonist. Remember, Father Fade has no expertise in canon law and has denied, point by point, the theses of religious man, but he obviously does not consider these people sufficiently valid. As regards Don Fernando Maria Cornet, also without any qualifications in canon law, it is important to point out the Archbishop Gianfranco Saba has attempted several occasions to make the priest see reason without any success. The Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith has signed the provision, which will be notified to the priest in the next few hours. Even with regard to this priest, priests are urged not to host him or invite him. End quote. So this priest has been shunned, kicked out of his order, and shunned. The only thing I did not see there was that he was removed from the clerical state. Yet. That article is about a week old. This predates what happened to Father Cornet, everything. This has been in motion for some time. And note how Solete non Possum reports this. Solete non Possum tends to be a fairly conservative, acknowledges there's a crisis in the church and is willing to defend the Latin Mass kind of outlet. But they will give no quarter, not even a breath of opportunity for the various positions to be taken seriously that say that maybe there's something wrong with Francis and his claim to the papacy itself. There's only about 1,000 different variations of theories there. They were dismissive of the central claim, that there was no theological rationale behind it. I'm not necessarily someone who believes that Benedict was the last pope and that Francis is an anti-pope, but I can't dismiss the work of Anne Barnhart or Edward Mazza or Andrea Cioncini or anybody who promotes the ideas, the various theses, by saying there's no theology behind it, because there very clearly is theology behind it, just like there's a theological foundation to sedevacantism, which is not the same thing as those other positions. They all have a theology behind them. Whether or not it's true or not is entirely dependent on whether people are willing to engage with it and actually try to argue based on theology and engage with the arguments. But they're not even willing to do that. Instead, the Vatican, with the bishops, crushes the dissent. This is a problem that's not going away. It's spreading. It used to be that if you heard anybody saying, oh, Benedict was the real pope, Francis has definitely never been pope, it was usually an American saying it or maybe an Italian. You didn't hear much elsewhere. This problem, if you want to call it a problem, or this awakening, if you want to call it that, is spreading throughout the church. So why are they crushing it in such a way that only guarantees it's going to get worse? So now that priest was removed from the priesthood. Father Fade was. So we go back to Solete non Possum for this headline. Father Giorgio Fade, dismissal from the order notified. Yes, he was formally notified that he has been removed from the priesthood at the behest of Rome. The Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith would be involved in this, so would, of course, Francis himself. These are, Fernandez and the usual suspects in Rome, the biggest heretics there. And the question, you should be entertaining is, most of us know when people say outlandish things, the best way to keep that from spreading is not to engage with it and to give it credibility. And if the Vatican and the church authorities think the entire subject of Francis not being a legitimate pope for one reason or another is outlandish, then perhaps they should not engage with it. Maybe they should dismiss it. And when asked by Catholic media figures what they think, just dismiss it with a laugh. That's how you take care of these things. But instead, they come down like the wrath of God on them. From the article, quote, Today, November 18th, 2024, at 5 p.m., the provision of dismissal from the Order of Discalced Carmelites, signed by the Most Reverend Father Miguel Marquis Calais, OCD, was notified to the priest Giorgio Maria Fade. As the letting on possum anticipated, in fact, the document had been signed by the Superior General, arrived in Rome to be countersigned in the General Curia, and has now been delivered to the interested party as required by law. In recent days, the religious man had incited his followers against Salete non possum, accused by the priest of having lied. Fade also read, without any authorization, a personal email sent to him by the Superior General had deliberately distorted its meaning to make his followers understand that this information portal had lied and slandered him. Today, the denial comes directly from the order, which has taken the necessary steps in which we had anticipated. Giorgio Maria Fade, a priest belonging to the Order of Discalced Carmelites, is accused of schism. That is, the crime foreseen by the Code of Canon Law in Canon 751. Quote, the refusal of submission to the Supreme Pontiff or of communion with the members of the Church subject to him. His schismatic activity began, at least officially, on the 13th of October, 2024, when he gave a 1 hour and 28-minute homily in which he supported the invalidity of the election of Pope Francis. These theories, which are not canonically supported, are false and the result of serious distortions of history and the intentions of Benedict XVI. Fade, in fact, has no expertise in canon law, and this clearly emerges from his theories. He establishes the law, quote, the apostate, the heretic, and the schismatic incur excommunication late sententia without prejudice to the provisions of Canon 194, subsections 1, number 2. Furthermore, he can be punished with the penalties mentioned in Canon 1336, subsections 2 to 4. If prolonged contumacy or the gravity of the scandal requires it, other penalties can be added, not excluding dismissal from the clerical state. Canon 1364, as the Code of Canon Law recalls in Canon 701, a religious dismissed from his order cannot exercise sacred orders unless he has first found a bishop who, after a suitable period of probation in the diocese, according to the norm of Canon 693, accepts him or at least permits him to exercise sacred orders. This possibility is not contemplated in this case because of the schismatic positions of the cleric. He may appeal to the competent authority within 30 days of notification. The appeal has a suspensive effect. Since this is a serious crime within the jurisdiction of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, the same dicastery may proceed, ex officio, to present to the Holy Father the request for the dismissal from the clerical state pro bono ecclesia. End quote. In other words, he's kicked out of his order, and because he was a religious priest, he can only practice anything having to do with the priesthood with the permission of a local bishop somewhere, which he won't get. He has been de facto removed from the religious state, and the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith is free to just summarily remove him from the priesthood if it so wishes, without any kind of due process, which is exactly what's going to happen to him. Why? Because he and another priest promoted the idea that Francis is an anti-pope, a thesis many of you agree with. So, to answer your question once again, where are the other priests? Where are the other bishops? To answer Bishop Strickland's question, what will it take? He asked that question, and I covered that in a live stream last week. What will it take for the bishops to stand up, to defend the faith against these heretics? What will it take? Well, now we have the answer. They've been dismissed from the clerical state, anybody who speaks up. Please keep praying for these priests, both of these priests in the story. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.